This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. So, welcome to this session of the European Alliance Against Coronavirus Fora. As introduction, okay, we have been meeting since past year about many different topics related to the consequences of the COVID crisis. Most of them has been related also to the disruptions in the value chains. For example, our last meeting was about microelectronics. Before that, we met about boots, and now it's time to review the situation on critical raw materials. And we are very glad to have you here as experts to discuss what is the reality, and we want to really touch ground, you know, and if possible, what can be done. Okay, so this is a open fora. We will have several presentation to set the scene, and later we will open the floor for all of you. And I want to really encourage you to contribute with your knowledge, with your expertise, with your ideas. Okay, this is not a conference, and it will not be good if we finish it as a conference. It's a task force, I would say. It's a group to work together to share information and to really deeply understand what is happening and to share different views on what is happening. Okay, that is the introduction. I see that we have with us the main speakers. So thank you for joining us today, and also thank you in advance for participate. Not to actively participate. You can use the chat. You can also speak directly when we open the floor for everybody. This session is being recorded. That is important for you to know. If we decide that, generally speaking, we publish all our sessions, okay? We make it public and we share it then in our channels, okay? And those of the ECCP. But if we decide that it's better not to publish the discussion, we could do that, okay? So it's something that we could decide at the end. But anyway, you for now, you need to know that we are recording the session for at least for internal use. Thank you. And now it's time to give the floor to Marek Sreor, that is team leader of the cluster unit in the European Commission. Thank you, Marek.
Antonio, thank you again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, we have the meeting on specific topic where we want to involve clusters and particularly to get the tacit knowledge on what is happening on the market. And today we have raw materials as one of the among, as we said, woods or chips, very important issue at this very moment we have. And as you know very well, last week was the whole raw materials week. So there's a lot of wealth of knowledge being gathered there with all policies, speeches, and experts. But here we are in the cluster context as well. What clusters in practice can do. So we all know when we started the industrial strategy, there is and the update of May, we identified that we have the strategic dependencies, particularly in some critical raw materials. So I'm not going to get in depth in all this analysis, because if you Antonio allow me to share just very shortly, we have the list of the list of I hope you can see it.
See it, yes, Marek. Now it's
Okay.
perfect.
So in September last year, we published the communication on raw materials, listed 30 most important critical raw materials, and this is this is very much updated all the time with some more critical because of lack of supply, be it from domestic sources or the EU. So we have all this analysis in the communication. We have as well now the EAT raw materials working as a lead for the raw materials alliance, and they are working very hard on details. Raw materials week on YouTube. There's 7.5 hours of very good speeches, presentations. So the wealth on this is there. And as well, I must admit, this is probably one of the most investigated and well screened areas. So there is this raw materials information system, as you might know very well, with profiles, country profiles, with both demand and supply side, so that you can search by any kind of material. So the knowledge information is there. It's a question now to get the practitioners to suggest what can be done at best in the short and the long term. As well, in September, there's the European call for action being which was issued by the European Raw Materials Alliance. So the wealth of knowledge is there, but today the meeting is it's not conference, it's not seminar, it's about practical discussion how clusters can be involved in this, and as well as some practical from practitioners, for people who are on the messages which we can pass to our commissioner as well, to see who he can meet, with whom he need to talk, what he can push in order to help us in any shortages. And as you know, the main things is, for example, permanent magnets, traction motors for electric vehicles and windmills. So without permanent magnets, this will not work. We have issue with magnesium for the production of aluminium, and lithium and synthetic graphite for production of electric batteries. We all know the demand is going to grow. The access to raw materials is very small, so we need to have recycling. But that's it on my side as an introduction. But I will give the floor to experts to share with us the tacit knowledge beyond all of these analytical resources that we have. Thank you.
Very much to you, Marek. So now it's time to give the floor to Santiago Cuesta, who is responsible of EAAC and also the coordinator of the project Mind the Gap. Santiago, welcome.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hello,
Antonio. Thanks a lot for your invitation. Can you hear me well? And
yes, are you going to share a presentation or yes?
Yes, do you see
I
it
see
or
it
not?
in the screen. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
It's okay. Antonio, how much time do I have?
More or less maximum 10 minutes, because we have 4 speakers, so we need to have time to discuss. That is very important.
Super. I will restrict to the 10 minutes. So good morning, everyone. My name is Santiago Cuesta. I am the general manager of EAAC Foundation, but I am also the cluster manager and the general manager of the National Iberian Sustainable Mining Cluster. No? So I have these two hats. Icanfil is a foundation working particularly in the raw materials value chain. No? It's a competence center that was promoted by the government of Castilla y León to precisely try to boost the exploitation of the endogenous resources and the raw materials. And the cluster is our national cluster in Spain, and it's working, and both institutions are working towards the top 10 challenges and needs that we need in sustainable mining for the sustainable supply of raw materials. And just following the introduction of Marek, our cluster, and this is the richness, for instance, of the territories and territories like Spain, the companies of my cluster, they already or they have active exploitation in all the highlighted raw materials that you see with respect to the European list of critical raw materials of 2020. This is to say that indeed we have resources, and we have the resources in Europe. I will not enter into all details because of the reduced time, but the raw materials, you know, that are essential. Without raw materials, we cannot have medicines, we cannot have mobiles, we cannot have mobile phones, we cannot have technology. And more particularly, we are not able to really catch and to really deploy the European Green Deal. If we want to really go to the sustainable mobility and the electrification of the transportation or the universalization of the communications, we need raw materials. And this is widely known. European Commission knows. I think everybody knows, and now everybody is starting to realize that we are in this crisis. This is not new. This started in 2011 when European Commission launched the European Innovation Partnership in raw materials. By the way, I am representing Spain as member state in this forum, and also this is something that is now even more important in the context of the of this green transition. For instance, only for the lithium batteries value chain, we are expecting to need close to 1 million tons of cathode, anodes, and electrolytes raw materials like nickel, cobalt, aluminium, magnesium, graphite, and lithium. So Europe is doing solutions like EAAC raw materials, like with ERMA. Commissioner Thierry Breton launched the communication in 3rd of September last year about the importance of going towards the resilience in raw materials and to really make the security and sustainability of the sector. But I think there is a one of the points that I want to raise the debate today, and it's missing, and I think it's missing in the European, well, or not fully fulfilled, better said, in the European policies and in the European activities, is the point that raw materials are endogenous resources. That means that the regions and other regions that who play a crucial role. It's even more important, this role of the regions, than the role of the technology and attracting technology and developing European projects on technology. And regions are crucial because they are the channel to really create attractiveness for investments. If the regions are not promoting investments, there will not be investments and new raw materials projects. The local opinion, the social license to operate, permits and policy. We need really to speed up the policy and the permits, and there is a big debate that I will raise at the end of my presentation. And also the regions are the channels to the governments. Sometimes mining projects are stopped at national level, and regions are really the ones to discuss, at least in the scheme that we have in Spain, to the national government about the importance of fostering investments and fostering permits and fostering activities in raw materials in particular regions. For instance, as you will see later, in the youth transition regions. We are doing a lot of effort in this regard. I will not enter into all the details, but our activity as cluster and as foundation came from long time ago with different Interreg projects, the MIREU, which is the Mining and Metallurgy Regions of Europe, and the COMER, which is a group under ERWIN. And also we have launched the Advanced Materials for Batteries, where I chair the sustainable supply pilot of raw materials for the batteries value chain, and also the mining industry. All this under the smart specialization platforms, and that is where we have to go, where investment in the regions. I want to thank Kristina Jokalainen and Ilkka Nikanen, who are the coordinators of the mining industries SVP, in which we are very active in locating investments, locating projects, and debating with the regions. So, just to give a quick example of how rich we are, in Spain, for instance, we have 10% of the reserves of tungsten of the world. We have in Castilla y León, we have Borovia mine for magnesite, magnesium. So we have the resources, we have the magnesium, and this is operative. No, what we need to do is to open more mines and to deal better with the production. And also Paul Avenia is in France. They are creating a cluster on lithium, no, of lithium-rich regions for supplying of the raw materials value chain for the batteries. Second action that I would like to raise, and apologies for being so quick, but as Antonio said, the importance is the debate. No? Second action that I think is critical is raw materials and investment in the territory must work together by the hand. And it is urgently needed to support the private investment in raw materials. It's important to educate with forum the investment firms. The investment firms needs to be comfortable in investing in raw materials. And for doing that, they need to understand how works the business, but also they need to feel supported by the public figures. No? They need supported, for instance, by the European Commission, that if they invest in raw materials, they are going to be supported. It's not going to be a failure. And this is going to generate the private-public partnerships, and who I think is the vehicle to really boost priority projects in raw materials in the regions. No? And the European Commission must negotiate urgently with national governments for the use of recovery funds and the regional development funds in the support of solid and sustainable raw materials investment projects. And for sustainable, I mean economically sustainable, but also, of course, environmentally sustainable, which is one of the key concepts. We are doing a lot of work on that. Again, I will not have time to tell you all what we are doing, but we have created an investment platform, a database of projects. We are creating our own business investment platform, looking at local opportunities with the regions, mapping the capacities of the small and medium enterprises ecosystem around, and of course, creating open forums of discussion and debates with firms that are investors in the raw materials, and also to try to follow this education, no, of the investment firms. Third action, raw materials are a key element in the just transition. Many regions under the just transition are very rich in critical raw materials, and therefore a transposition of the previous activities in coal plants, coal mining, can be transposed to the fostering of sustainable mining of essential raw materials as much as possible. No? And for doing that, we need to introduce this urgently in the just transition action. And many regions that are complying with this, they have to study actions with the local unions, with the authority to favor the fostering of these mining projects that already exist in just transition regions. So again, we are working on this. We are creating innovation poles. We are trying to foster these investments. We are one region under the just transition, and we are cooperating with other regions under the just transition in Aragon, like in Andalusia, and Galicia, and Asturias. Almost finally, I think I need just two extra minutes. For action 4, I think this is one of the key actions, no, that we have to work with the European Commission. Action 4 is to foster the sustainable mining and work in the improvement of the application of the policy. In Spain, we have approved the sustainable mining standards. This came from Canadian, and this is very important because we have to avoid the not in my backyard position. This is the typical argument that at the end the ecologists are doing, no, I don't want this, I don't want the other, but they don't care that, for instance, China is not respecting all the safety regulations, sometimes all the environmental regulations. and not only China but also other countries. No, we see examples, no, of how the graphite mining, cobalt mining, rare earth mining, lithium extraction. No, so this is not tolerable, and what we have to do is to discuss and to carry out serious technical and scientific discussions with the NGOs and the ecologists to achieve a consensus on the sustainable mining supply, because it's clear that we have to respect the environment and we have to respect the workers, no? And together we must, as soon as possible, reach an agreement on how to carry out the sustainable supply of raw materials. And for that, we need really intense debate and intense technical discussions. Last but not the least, the action 4 is thinking in the small ones. I think it's very important to strategically support the small and medium enterprises' local ecosystems across the full value chain of raw materials, particularly adapting that to the 21st century and to the post-COVID crisis. And for that, we are proposing actions like the creation of a meta-cluster in raw materials, link the effectiveness of clusters with the strength of mining associations. So sometimes we have clusters in raw materials and we have a very strong associations. Later on we will see Euromines. We have in Spain also Confident, which is also part of Euromines, doing a fantastic work, and the two visions has to be clustered, never better said, in this kind of meta clusters, no, European or pan-European side. And clusters are the key vehicle to fund the small and medium enterprises with, for instance, cascade funding that has to be directed to create green funding to small and medium enterprises to help them to really go to sustainable mining. I will not enter into any details, but on this, also Antonio is engaged as partner on this. We are coordinating Mind the Gap, which is trying to find sustainable solutions to the mining, funding projects to the small and medium enterprises by cascades funding. I will just close my intervention with 6 actions that I consider that are urgent actions for yesterday, not for today, for yesterday. First, and this is part of the debate on why we have crisis in raw materials, is we need urgently to regulate and to decide what to do with the cost of the electricity and the fuels. The other day, I was discussing with the main presidents of companies in Andalusia. They are thinking on stopping the production of the mines. Why? Because for them is not profitable. They have to pay a lot for the fuels, the electricity, and prices are not accordingly to the cost of exploitations. Second, I think we have to speed up urgently for those raw materials that are essential, the permits. Okay, I know, for instance, the case of a particular very essential raw material. I will not say it because if not, everybody will know the company. That is stopped at national level in Spain just because of, let's say, trending social actions. No. That means that it's fashion to stop some kind of minerals, some kind of exploitations, and then we decide to do this because it goes according to my politics or my public opinion, no? But this is not acceptable. I mean, if all the permits are there, if everything is working, and if this raw material is essential and there is no environmental of course, problem, we must speed up this. We cannot accept these kind of things. Databases of resources must be promoted to know where are the raw materials. We have an incredible knowledge, and that will allow to impulse these public-private partnerships on exploiting these raw materials. And for sure, a European database of open ongoing projects to speed them up, because I know a lot of projects that are in the permits, in the fights, starting, they need investments. So at the end, we can have help from the European Investment Bank to foster this kind of projects, or we can have help of the local and national governments to speed up the permits for those and the opening of exploitations that fulfill all the regulations, for sure, that are essential for our economy. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. You can always contact me there, and let's open the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for the big effort that I know you have done to summarize. Thank you, and we will go immediately to the next speaker, that is Marc Rachovides from Euromaterials. Welcome, Marc. Thank you for joining us.
Antonio, Marek, Santiago, thank you very much indeed, and good morning from Athens. I'm representing Euromines, which is the representative body of the European mining industry. I'm not going to go over the excellent summary that Santiago has just offered. I have actually, as I know Santiago for some years, and I appreciate the quality of his work. I immediately asked for a copy of his presentation because it was very concise and very, very appropriate. So bravo to you. And Marek, your introduction was spot on. So I will not go through my presentation. I provided it to Nina. It will be available to the members of this group for reference. And I was very clear in when I sent it on to you. So what have we learned from the experience that we are still suffering in COVID? What we've learned is that certain industries have become much more important, and that our industry, the raw materials sector, provides a critical role to them. We know what they are. We know that it's medicine, pharmaceuticals, logistics, etc. But we also have exemplified their problems. The problems are access, transportation, competition, prices. Most of these things Santiago just mentioned. It's difficult to find people. It's difficult to find components. It's difficult to find specialized inputs. For example, semiconductors. Everybody knows about that. They're not only used in cars. They're used in all sorts of machinery, and it's affecting production in all sorts of areas. Competition for finance is the other issue that we've noticed very, very dramatically. Stock exchanges are booming. Why are they booming? Because of people have this idea that certain sectors will burgeon. I'm not seeing the investment in new companies in our sector. That is alarming. So we are crucial for the value chain. Without us, there is no value chain. We start the value chain for all materials, not only critical raw materials. It's the basis of everyone's lives. I don't need to explain that to this group. But it's also important, increasingly, politically, globally, strategically, for the future of the European Union. That, in practical terms, was very well delineated by Santiago in his last speech. When we talk about what does that mean? It's not just capital cities. It's not just governments in particular places. It's regions. Mines are downstream convoy that follows after the mine, that goes everywhere from intermediate to primary to secondary processing to recycling, are generally not located in cities. They're located in peripheral areas. So our European Union is dependent upon these areas for the supply of the raw materials and the products we need. Look at shipping costs, ladies and gentlemen. Look at shipping costs for raw materials, for intermediate products, for finished products. There's an incredible dislocation. It's not only energy prices that are reflecting that. It's not only the fact that there's an arbitrage between liquefied national gas prices in one continent versus another. It is everything. What does that tell us? I said, what is the lesson we have to learn? The lesson we have to learn is we need to invest. One thing we do have, apart from natural resources, apart from the endowment that was very well illustrated both by both previous speakers, is our human capital. In my presentation, you can read them for yourselves. You'll see lots and lots of examples of this. Europe leads the world in innovation in mining. We lead the world. We can't diminish that. For some reason, we forget that most of technological innovation in our sector has started in Europe. Maybe the capital for it has come from somewhere else. Maybe the commercialization of it has been demonstrated somewhere else. But the reality is, if we're going to fight climate change, if we're going to respond to COVID, if we're going to respond to the new geopolitical situation, our first asset is ourselves. We've become so dependent on specialized materials, we've become so dependent upon specialized technology that we need to think through these problems, not simply spend our way through these problems. Lots and lots of examples of large companies responding well to that. I'll quote only a couple of examples. In northern Sweden, we have one company called LKAB, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's the largest iron ore producer in Europe. It produces arguably about 40% of what the whole of the European Union needs. They're entering into the largest industrial investment in recent Swedish history with a view to producing green steel. So that's essentially, they're ultimately looking for carbon neutral or carbon negative steel. They're a mining company. What they do is work with an electricity provider, with steel makers, with if you like, a large scale cluster. So large companies are able, because of their relationships, both financial, commercial, and in terms of personal, their access is very easy. Talking to another Swedish company recently, Boliden, one of the largest copper producers in the world, they don't have a problem raising money. Of course they don't, because they've already invested in production many years ago. So they are now valorizing their production. So they are able to invest from their own cash flow into forward-looking projects that can adapt and enable the response to climate change. But that doesn't apply to everybody. Lots of my members are in that position. We don't only represent large companies, however, we would represent national mining associations. And those national mining associations range from the aforementioned giants to a father and son mining operation with 4 employees in Carinthia in Austria. So we represent everybody. Some of these people don't have big voices. They don't have the ability to telescope themselves onto the stage. But the reality is we're all in the same process. The small companies of today are the big companies of tomorrow. We have one member, Lundin Mining. When I became president of Euromines in 2012, Lundin Mining was a relatively medium-sized company. It's vaulted itself through its progress, through its technical excellence, through good management, through good relationships, all the things we want to see, to become a plus 10 billion euro company. It's very successful. We need to see more of those in Europe. Just to give you a bit more context, ladies and gentlemen, whilst our industry displays all the innovation, most of our large corporate members are state of the art. They don't employ the 7 dwarves with a pick and a shovel and a light on their head. They are hugely automated. We do everything from virtual reality to flying drones underground to using digitization to its state of the art. We work with other industries. We're not very good at that historically, but we're getting very much better very fast. And that's something we need to share. It's about sharing. Santiago's absolutely right. We need to share our expertise. And there's all sorts of vehicles to do that. Excuse me. We can't make our economy more resilient and more robust unless we manage the risk collectively. So working together, we must improve domestic production. We must also improve awareness. Everybody knows these words: recycling, they know climate change, they know the climate emergency. They have this idea that we need certain metals. We don't really know what they do, but we need them to do certain things, but we're not really sure what. But how are we going to grow the future if we know all these things that most of our customers, our ultimate customers, don't know anything about? We need to improve knowledge of what we do, but we also need to have the framework to allow that to happen. And that framework takes 2 aspects. One has been already mentioned. It's the administrative and regulatory environment. We need to have clarity. Any investor in anything needs clarity. Why should I put my money into this? What do I expect? What are the risks? What may I gain? That's investment. Governments are really bad at investment as a general rule. They really are. What they need to do is let people who are technically competent make those investments. So one of the biggest pieces of news we had last week in the Raw Materials Week was the idea that we are going to be setting up financial vehicles to provide funding, not to the big companies I mentioned before, because they don't need the money. They can borrow money, they can raise money on stock exchanges without our help or our discussion, but to companies that participate in clusters. And more importantly, the companies, I beg your pardon, that will participate in the clusters of tomorrow. We can't compete globally at the moment in many areas. We need to invest to be able to do that. That needs to be both top down and bottom up. That's, I think, the most important thing. We need to enable that change, and we need to do that by having clarity in regulation, in permitting. We need to have clarity in finance. So I can continue for a long time. So I'm moving on. I'm going to ask Rolf to say one thing. The one area that causes, I think, the greatest concern in terms of policy and regulation is the Sustainable Finance Initiative. We need to bring this to people's attention. We cannot suffocate industry by mistake. So Rolf, I ask you to speak just for 1 minute to say a little bit about what the Sustainable Finance Taxonomy is and how it may affect this group and the industry in a whole. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your speech. I know that it's a big effort to be brief, but thank you, and we will have an opportunity to continue discussing later. So, welcome, Rolf Kubi from Euromine. Sorry for the mistake before. And the floor is yours. Do you want to present something or?
No, Antonio, I don't have a presentation. I think it's good to discuss, and I will only shortly complement with sustainable finance. And ladies and gentlemen, you have a duo of Euromines today. I'm the Director General since shortly, and I will only be short because the competence of all of what you've heard from Mark is far larger than mine in the mining sectors. I want to highlight two things. That is the questions that we will raise is investment, is regions, and what role they play for the acceptance for the society. So I think it's very important that investments in raw materials are supported by society and by Commission, and I would enlarge that not to the Commission but to the whole political area and the political scene. So I think there has been a major shift in society, and now we all here around the table understand that there is need for raw materials. But society thinks, and also downstreams, have been largely relying on commodities and commodity prices. And that was the trend for the last 20 years. There was a commodity that is needed for a product, for downstream, for a car production. And the manufacturers have relied that there is a availability and it's a commodity price that is the same for all of the competitors. So there was no need to invest in commodities and in raw materials in the last 20 years. This has dramatically changed, which was very visible now, but it has changed due to players like China, who has used the access to raw materials in a strategic way for their industry policy. The recent example of magnesium highlights how dependent we are on China and how dependent we are on certain commodities. And you all also are aware of the discussions about masks and pharmaceutical pharmacy products that were mainly provided in India throughout the crisis, which has led to a difficult situation in the COVID crisis. Now, coming to sustainable finance. Sustainable finance is the steering of the financial investment assets into sustainable investments. This sounds very obvious, and it sounds as very complementary to all of what we are doing to decarbonize the society, and the best practice examples that Mark has highlighted from the mining sector, which is already in Europe at least front runner examples of the decarbonization of the processes in mining. So the sustainable finance will steer the financing to sustainable investments. Now, mining is at a critical point because we are not considered as being eligible for sustainable finance, because our value that we provide to society is not directly. So that means all of the raw materials that are fed into the renewables, into the batteries, and all of the decarbonized processes that are needed for the modern society, they are not considered as being sustainable in the sense of that the mining process is not going to be sustainable. So we are at a difficult tipping point where the perception of mining is, and Santiago mentioned it with the not in my backyard, is something that has an impact at first sight, but there is possibilities with rehabilitation and with all of the best practice that is shown in the Euromines membership, that you can have a mining that is respecting the nature, that is respecting the rehabilitation of the areas that you have been working on. And this is something where we need to put forward the modern image of the mining that we represent with Euromines and with the examples that Santiago has highlighted in Castile Leon. Society understands that mining is indispensable for the modern society, for the change, for the realization of the Green Deal, and that we need to also accept mining because mining is possible in a sustainable and fair way for the society. I leave it here, and I promised, because also Santiago mentioned Paul Avenia with the lithium project, and I promised to Emmanuel Robins that I will share today in the chat here the invitation to a webinar, which is on Monday on a similar topic and how to build these regional clusters, because I think we need to all find the resources that we build strong links between the regional clusters. There have been projects, but we need a long-lasting network of mining regions, mining clusters to exchange best practices together. So I, with Euromines, can guarantee you that you will have the full support of Euromines to build a long-lasting, standing regional cluster alliance of clusters of mining regions. So thank you, Antonio, and thank you for the invitation.
You are very welcome, Rolf, and thank you. Please share the link to the meeting on Monday in the chat. We will for sure be happy to promote it. Okay, so now it's time to open the discussion to whoever wants to contribute with I know that there are really a big group of experts here. Please share, please give us your views and enrich the reflection. Who is the first? We are waiting for somebody with another approach. You can even challenge what has been said. Don't
Antonio,
be shy. Marta.
if you wish, I can start.
Bon dia, Marta.
Bom dia. Just two rapid notes about the idea that Santiago present of create a meta cluster in raw materials, cluster of mineral resources in Portugal. Thinks that it's a very good idea, and we must work on it and be very focused on the communication to society, on the ads, actions, dissemination to all the society, mainly young people, how and why raw materials are essential. I think this is crucial for our industry and for our lives. Another thing, just to let you know, the cluster in Portugal will start an action in January in all schools of in Portuguese schools. We will present to young people based in the game of AT project briefcase. We will go to schools, and we will put young people working with briefcase, and we will present the minerals, and we will start what we want is to give knowledge to young people to the importance of raw materials, because nowadays I don't want a mine in my backyard. It's here, but we have to work in the young generations in order to, in the future, don't have the same problems. And it's all.
Thank you, Marta. Obrigado. Yeah, you are right. We need to work on explaining. I think it's critical. This session was also focused on bottlenecks, current bottlenecks or possible close near bottlenecks. Will any of you highlight any risk that perhaps we are not so aware?
I can offer an observation with your permission, Antonio. We talk about critical raw materials a lot. There is impending bottlenecks for far more simple things like lithium, particularly aluminium, copper, which might sound extraordinary, but if you look at the levels of inventory for copper at the moment, they're dramatically low. Now, people can respond to these statements in different ways, but the reality is that we will not physically be able to build the things we need to do. You know, we may have to pay more prices. Those prices may be desirable or not. That's a different conversation. But the availability, as we have just seen, as I illustrated when I spoke in terms of energy, we are in a global market. You know, cargoes change hands on the open sea very fast now. So the answer is not to be reliable upon those cargoes, is to produce. The problem is you can't just hit a switch and somehow have aluminium. Aluminium is, of course, vulnerable to magnesium shortages in itself, but we will have physical shortages of the things we already produce in Europe. So what we need to do is produce more.
Is that because I totally understand the problem in terms of timing? Okay, I understand that it's not possible just to produce double in 1 month. Okay, there are alternatives. Are there in the market? Could we go for other markets outside? I don't know, the main ones. Or?
Look, I think there are, I suppose, you know, there are various solutions we can employ in an abstract setting, but we can discuss them a little bit because timing is different on all of them. One is trade, and we need to be very robust in our trade activities as the European Union, and we need to trade both ways. So a very good example is our trading relationship with Canada. So Canada is very good at producing bulk commodities. We're really good, as I said in my presentation, at sending expertise. So it's a very good two-way relationship. So investment flows go both ways. We need more examples of that. But the reality is that, you know, they are also supplying globally. So it's not a panacea. It's not an answer to all our problems. Recycling will get better, but cannot possibly deliver remotely enough yet. Very simple example. How do you get lithium out of the battery of an electric vehicle? And the battery in an electric vehicle is laser welded. You know, the cost of removing the lithium from that, the energy you spend, the CO2 footprint of doing that is huge at the moment. There is no commercially viable solution. We will have one in time. We're clever, we'll do it, but we haven't done it yet. You know, we can say, okay, everybody should now start surrendering their own mobile phones. That's also great, but we need to look at the absolute numbers. They're not enough. We need to produce more, we need to trade more, we need to do all of these things, but we need to remove the barriers to doing them. And we are walking on one leg with one eye closed at the moment. We need to open both eyes and allow ourselves the freedom to act and show people that we can do it, not only commercially successfully, but socially and environmentally successfully.
Thank you, Mark. And what about stockpiling? I saw that term in Santiago's presentation. Could you comment on that problem and what could be done?
Is that directed to me or to everyone in general?
Whoever wants to answer.
Look, I think stockpiling is an issue. It's not a uniform issue, I have to say. I mean, if you look at stockpiling of rare earths, it's a particularly acute issue. And that is very much a tap. China is in control of that tap. But more importantly, we talked about how, if you talk about rare earths, the process of going from mining a rare earth metal to actually deploying it in the application you want to use involves different stages. So what do we actually mean by stockpiling? Do we mean stockpiling of the mineral, the metal, the intermediate product, etc.? So we need to broaden our eyes to what we actually mean by stockpiling. And there's market manipulation. We've seen that for years in different commodities, but now we're seeing market manipulation and political action in terms of all of the stages of production, which is why I mentioned it. It's not just, I'm sitting in Greece at the moment as I speak to you. It's not just my wealthy Greek ship owner countrymen making lots of money because the shipping market is in their favor. It's countries securing assets, securing different stages of production. We are 10 years behind the Chinese. Let's be honest about it. In electric battery production and in terms of renewable component production, we are 10 years behind, and we need to accelerate our investment. All of the introductory remarks made by Marek are correct. These are the areas we need to focus on. But from small acorns we get trees, so we need to invest in the right way, in the right places, and the right time.
Thank you. Any reaction to those comments? Please, I remember what I told you at the beginning. Contribute with your ideas. Santiago, come please.
I am fully agree with Mark, and I would like to add also the important point of the cost of the transportation, which is also related to the stockpiling and the trading strategies, that at the end at all levels, not only at the very starting point of the raw materials value chain, as Mark was saying, it's not only just the raw material, it's the raw material transform, raw material, it depends. We are speaking about different things. But I think it's very urgent to solve the problem of the cost of the transportation, the cost of fuel, and the cost of energy. This is at least the mining companies that in Spain, they are totally now urgently worried about this. And what is the problem of the electricity in Spain? At the end, the production of energy. In my humble opinion, I think we have gone very fast in the transition. We have closed all the plants. We don't want to rely on nuclear energy. So then we want to do a urgent, and this is also very important. We want to do an urgent move to the electrical transportation, but we have not thought that the technologies, as Mark said very clearly, the technologies in which we are relying, which are lithium batteries, the extraction of the lithium and the process of lithium is really very much more. Perhaps we are trying to solve the climate change by doing this, but then we are also forcing another environmental problem, which is the lithium process and the lithium extraction and the fingerprint that this has. So there are many things to be debated, but this for me is very clear and urgent that in order to produce more, which is the solution that I totally agree with Mark, produce more, move more, transport more all the raw materials, so increase the competition doing all that. In addition of the regulations, we need, at least in Spain, urgently solve the problem of the fuels and the electricity cost. If not, the companies are going to stop. At the end, the resource is there, so they can wait, and then they will use it. And I think this is an urgent problem to be transferred to European Commission. How we can deal with it. Well, they are already on this, but I think the solutions are not coming. And in Spain, you know that we are going to have strikes of the transportation, strikes about the agriculture, because at the end they suffer from the fuels also. So this is something to find urgently a solution.
Thank you, Santiago. I see Mario Huequincas in the screen. Would you like to contribute, Mario?
Hello, good morning. Compliment to pronounce my surname. It's quite difficult. So keep it simple. My name is Mario. I'm from Austria, from Innsbruck. I work in the Enterprise Europe network. I don't know if anyone heard about this. I am chairman of the sector group Materials, and I was also involved in the EU Raw Materials Week last week. And the most important thing, the key takeaways for me was the mind shift in the value chain of materials. I'm not an expert in materials, I'm a networker, but I understand this point that we import materials from other countries, use them, and in the case of batteries, for example, we export the batteries without value to the other countries. And this mindship was impressive for me, to keep these materials in Europe and make them secondary materials, so add value also to these materials. And I think this would be a concept that we will also concentrate within the network, because we are more located with our companies in the downstream value chain than in mining, for example. And I think secondary materials and substitute advanced materials is that what we can really good focus in Europe, in my opinion.
Mark.
Yeah, I think you raise some interesting points. With respect, I think there are also some misconceptions, but let's concentrate on the positives. Your point about secondary mining is a very good one, and something that we really don't do enough in Europe. We have, I don't know the exact number, this is a very big and separate conversation, but there are many thousands of old mine sites, some of which have been abandoned because they're uneconomic. Some have been brought to the end of their lives. Some are simply just waste sites. They're, for example, relating to a steel mill or a power plant that no longer exists. But there are many thousands, let's say 7,000 or 8,000. Very few of them have been looked at in terms of sources for new raw materials, which is interesting because many of them were mined or processed many generations ago. So this is an area we need to focus on, secondary mining. It strikes me as very strange, anomalous, because we have the expertise, we have the technology, we have the people, we have the equipment, and this is a site that would be mined, processed, and then brought to a condition which is environmentally far better than it is today. Not just one, not 10, thousands of them. And there are companies today, for example, in Canada, who are now switching from saying primary mining is our main business to saying secondary mining is our main business. They're complementary. You know, to my mind, there is no difference. You just moved one stage ahead in the process. So we should be deploying our resources. And in many cases, these are not huge sites. And again, they're located in the regions. So in that sense, I agree with the previous speaker. In other senses, I think we need to wake up to our import dependency. We have become consumers. We have exported large sections of our industry by default in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think many Europeans don't realize the sheer quantity of it. It's terrifying in some respects.
Thank you, Mark. I can share with you a concrete example of what you just said here in Aragon, in Spain. Sanca has opened a mine that was from coal, and now it's creating fertilizers from the same mining. And I think it's a very close example of this kind of reindustrialization. Okay, so I heard the word nuclear, and I have heard that word several times during the last days, speaking about the energy production. And that I think is a very interesting debate also to have. I don't know, not possibly today, okay, but at other moment we need to be brave, I think, and if that is a possible answer, I think that we need to hear your opinions on that point also. It's time to close. I don't know if somebody wants to make a last remark.
Yes, Antonio, thank you very much. It was short, wealth. I mean, the stories, main takeaways, importance of regions and territory. Then financing support being guarantees. We are dealing with very capital intensive. There's something which is still not very clear, the role of SMEs in this business, so through clusters, because this is very much capital intensive, and you need to really have a capacity, financial capacity to have, so the role of clusters and SMEs in the value chain of I imagine renewals and also all this stuff. Very interesting point on the secondary mining. I mean, this is something which is a novelty for me. To 10,000 sites, nobody looked at it. I must admit. Thanks for this input. And when we have the action plan, I put on magnets. I wonder there are some concrete actions, including the setting up the fund, where the clusters can be. But this is on another discussion. But I think I don't know if there's anything else the clusters can add to this action plan for magnets as a concrete example, first example, pilot example, what we can do if we have really the shortage. And of course, all this we can talk about trade skills and so forth. But I think Santiago, thanks for as well very clearly 6 points that we can reuse if there is further work on clusters in this, and there will be for sure. Then we will permit ourselves to come back to you. There are Euro clusters. The deadline is for tomorrow, for 30th of November. This gives a chance for clusters and mining bring together and start working. 2 days ago, we launched the call for interregional innovation investment, bringing together the regions working on mining, the opportunity deadline by the end of February. So there are some opportunities, of course, Horizon, all of this. Use these opportunities, and then we continue. And the last thing, fair level playing field. I see this big issue in fair level playing field for this industry. Not the same standards, not the same expectations in Europe as in the other countries, which definitely makes less unfair competition indeed. Yeah? Okay, thank you very much. It was very helpful. 1 hour, but very rich. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marek.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
everyone.
Thanks to everyone. Yes. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you, Santiago.
Bye, Marta. Thank you.